Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar from the MIT Alumni Golfers Association, where we're going to be hearing from our own Kim Dinh, PhD from MIT, about her experience in playing in the U.S. Women's Open today. We're just letting a few more people come in, so just sort of a bit of a slow start here, but thank you very much for joining us. My name's Tony Davis. I'm the president of the MIT Alumni Golfer Association. So welcome very much. I thought I'd just start by giving you a little bit of an intro to MITAGA and our group, and then tell you about the structure of our webinar fireside chat today, and then a quick bit of bio about Kim's background. And then Ken and Kim will start the fireside chat for the main session today. So MITAGA, MIT Alumni Golfers Association, we have a little under 500 alumni members at the moment. The purpose of the group, it's an affinity group, is to welcome golfers of all levels, also non-golfers, those are interested in the game, and people who are just interested in the game from the aspect of science or technology or architecture or the psychology and mentality. So not restricted to golfers per se, but a common interest. We have a worldwide annual golf tournament, which is mainly virtual, but we do encourage alumni to get together in real life in person and play golf together, either in that tournament or otherwise. We obviously have a directory of where all our members are, so that can help facilitate some face-to-face play. And on the global tournament each year, we have various categories, so open and senior age groups and net and gross winners. So we call out various winners and they get a modest prize, but of course the pride of winning. And we will actually this year be looking to redesign that tournament to some extent and just build on and improve from where we were in the last couple of years. So, and then the other main part of MITAGA is holding events like those today, seminars and webinars. And in the past, we've had the good fortune to have world-renowned golf course architects and designers like Tom Doak and Cynthia Dye. We had the general manager of the country club at Brookline telling us what it's like to prepare for and host a major. We had the Harvard coach for men's and women's team telling us about the psychology or mental approach to the game. So a wide range of things. And then also planned for later this year, we have Mark Brody, famous for strokes gained or golf analytics, and also the R&A World Golf Museum at St Andrews in Scotland will give us a presentation and discussion about various aspects of the history of golf. So that's a sort of sense of MITAGA. So thank you for joining or participating. If you'd like to join, don't hesitate. Easy enough to find us online. So second thing I wanted to talk about is the structure of the session today, given a heavy hint already. But Kim, who's our main speaker, and Ken, who are both board members of MITAGA, will have a fireside chat, 20 minutes. We'll see how it goes, half an hour. We'll see how long that is. And then we'll transition into the last session, which will be a Q&A session. So hopefully you can all see your Q&A button or flag at the bottom of the screen. So please type in questions as we come up to and during that last session, just to let everyone know. Everybody on the webinar will be able to see what questions are typed, or at least as they initially go in. So you've been forewarned there. Okay, so third thing for me, and then I'll hand over to Kim and Ken with thanks, is just to sort of briefly mention some of the highlights of Kim's very impressive amateur career as a golfer. It's no doubt tough for her to talk too much about it because it just sounds like boasting. So I could go on at great length, but just some of the highlights to give you a flavor. So Kim started playing at the age of 7. Her first tournament, I think, was when she was 11 or so. And ever since then, she's been playing competitive golf as a junior through high school and at college. She was on the varsity golf team at the University of Wisconsin, where she was an undergraduate. And while at college, she was, in 2015, she was awarded the Big Ten Medal of Honor and was a Big Ten nominee for NCAA Woman of the Year award. So distinguished golf career. Then she took a hiatus from competitive golf and spent 5 years doing a PhD at MIT, but did play golf while at MIT, and for 3 years was president of the club golf team at MIT. And then she returned to competitive amateur golf upon completing her doctorate in 2020. And notably, she's won the 2021 Michigan Amateur and the 2020 Michigan Mid Amateur, which notably then had her qualify. Sorry, and then in 2023 she won the women's mid amateur championship, which therefore qualified her for the 2024 U.S. Women's Open, which is obviously the main subject for today. And when she's not out on the golf course, I don't know how much, that might be half an hour a day that she's not golfing, based at least on her record, but her day job and professionally, she's an associate research scientist at Dow. So it's so wonderful of Kim to share her experiences, and not many of us will have had a chance to have the inside track or story at the US Open. So really looking forward to hearing about her experience and how she approached it. And thank you very much, Ken, for being our moderator in the fireside chat. So over to you, Kim and Ken. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. So I'm Ken Yoon, and we'll be moderating, having a Q&A chat with Kim, and then we'll open up later on for questions from the audience as well. So Kim, thanks for joining. It's an honor to talk to someone who's actually competed in a US Open. I've been to a couple of those tournaments myself, watching as a prospector. The Bethpage 2009 when Tiger was there, and then the Marion in PA, I think a few years later when Justin Rose won. And I've been to some other women's tournaments, but it's an honor. And maybe we'll start, before we get into the actual prep and all the leading up to US Open and the practice round and the day of the week of there, but just how was golf part of your life growing up, and when did you start? I mean, you started at 7, but a little bit about the history of when you started golf and how that was part of your life, and then we'll focus on more of the last 5 years. So.
So cool. No, I'm happy to share my experiences. Don't always talk about them, but it's always fun to reflect on them. So as Tony mentioned, I started when I was 7. My dad caught the bug, so he had no exposure to golf before. And then since my uncle, his brother, had him try it out, he liked it. So then he had the rest of the family try. My older brother and my mom didn't enjoy it, so they stopped very quickly. But my younger brother and I were 2 years apart. We kept playing. We enjoyed it. We would go after dinner with my dad. We'd go play the little par 3 course in Midland, and then get ice cream after. So, ice cream's always a good incentive. And then over the summers, we would just play. And so that would be how we'd spend our summers. So we would just play at our local course. We played some tournaments, and then kept playing through high school, and played through college and all of that, but definitely took a break since had spent a lot of time golfing up until that point. So took a break from that and caught the bug again in 2020 after I finished my PhD, but wasn't starting work at Dow until the end of the summer. So I had the whole summer off, and especially during COVID, you couldn't travel, which was my original plan.
Yeah, so you caught the bug again during COVID, and I know golf became really popular too, right? During COVID.
Yeah. So it was a good way to get out. Had signed up for the Michigan Mid-Am that year. It was like right after I had defended my thesis. So, I had 0 expectations, and somehow played well enough to win there, which, it was fun being under the gun again and had the nerves going pretty high on those first couple holes, since it had been a while since I had been in a tournament.
I know, so when you caught the bug in 2020, 21, did you have a goal in mind to make it to the US Open at all? Or did you have any goals like that, or are you trying to just compete one at a time?
The US Open was always like bucket list item, and, felt a very far off dream for the most part. As a mid-am, I'm not playing competitive golf like the college players are nowadays, or even the high school players, actually, really. And so there's probably 2 ways to qualify. I win the US Mid-Am, totally doable. But also you got to play really good golf. So not very many people can call yourself a USGA champion. Where you go play a 36-hole qualifier and try and win, one or two of the spots available in those 36-hole one-day qualifiers, which typically have like 70 to 75 people. So you have to play good golf. And it's typically early in the season when I'm just knocking some rust off yet. So usually a tall task on that side as well.
Okay. So you took the MITAM tournament. Tell us a little bit about how that tournament was qualifying. What was like that week, that tournament?
Yeah, so the US Mid-Am, I think in 2014 or 2015, they changed it to help try and incentivize and get more women to play. And it's the same for the men. Was that they gave an exemption to the US Open, to the champion. And so, that was awesome, but just winning a USGA championship was always, I thought would be really cool. That's a very small group of people. And so I started playing that in 2021 since they canceled it in 2020. And it's where those over 25. So I went through a local qualifier at the state level. They'd have qualifiers throughout the US. Played well enough to get into the main field. So it's a field of 132. And then after 36 holes of stroke play, they go to match play for the top 64, and you play your way through that bracket. So that year I got to the round of 16. Yeah, got to the round of 16, which actually didn't know it at the time since they changed it for the year after. But if you make it to the round of 16, you're exempt into the tournament for the year after. So you don't have to go through local qualifying. So that was nice. So now I can plan my calendar. And then in 2022, got to the quarterfinals. So got one round further than the round of 16. And then 23 last year, was able to win.
Great.
Yeah. And so that got me into the US Open, also got me into the next 10 US Mid-Ams, and a couple of US Ams.
Okay. What did you do when you won that tournament and qualified? What's the first thing you did?
It was funny. We had all the interviews, but the night before I got food poisoning, so wasn't exactly eating a lot. And so, finally felt more okay after I'd won, and then trying to let it board off to actually pick at some food. But actually, we drove out to Stonewall where it was, which is right outside of Philadelphia from Midland. So we drove part of the way back soon after, got to Toledo pretty late Friday night. Thursday night. I presented at a project update meeting for work Friday morning, and then finally got back to Midland Friday afternoon.
Gotcha. So that was September 23. So, and I know the US Open was in May, right? End of May 2024. So you had, 7-8 months. So tell us about the prep, what went into those 8 months to get ready for US Open. Tell us about that a little bit.
So spent a lot more time in the gym, really dedicated myself to that. Worked with a trainer for the first time since college, which has been really awesome, and I still am. It's been motivating and pushing you to, chase your goals a little bit in the gym. And so that a little bit of that started because I broke my ankle at the beginning of 2023 skiing. So stayed off the skis as well in the 7 to 8 months leading up to the US Open as well. And then in Midland, it gets cold, it snows. So hit a lot of golf balls and try to work on some swing changes. Kind of keep doing the same stuff, but refine it and get better at it. So hit a lot more balls on the simulator and indoors than I otherwise typically would in past winters. Fortunately, the winter was pretty mild here. So our course, my club actually had to take the covers off of the greens at the end of February because a heat wave came through, and they actually left them off. So we were actually able to be on the course pretty early on in 2023.
Gotcha. I know obviously physical, the gym, that aspect of the game, but any kind of mental prep you were doing before the tournament? No?
I didn't do a whole lot. to first make it through a bracket, like the US Mid-Am, that's a lot of golf and a lot of high pressure golf. So
Okay.
I'm reflecting about that is taking a lot of those learnings and how my approach to golf in the last year, which is a lot of gratitude, a lot of zero expectations sort of thing. So just kind of take that mindset and, just go out and play and see what happens and not, get too hung up in every little shot.
Gotcha. So I know you said, I think you mentioned that you made a scouting trip to Lancaster, right? For the tournament, right? In April?
Yep. Yeah, so that was the end of April. I'll share a couple pictures actually. Yeah, so since it's the US Open, those who qualify, they're allowed to take scouting trips. Really no limit on it. It's just kind of subject to course availability. So I got out there, took a trip on a weekend at the end of April. And so played 36 holes, flew in Saturday, flew out late Sunday, just to see the course and get an idea of what to prep for. I mean, you kind of know, the reputation of a US Open. It's going to be hard. The rough's going to be thick. The greens are going to be fast. And, it was April and it was already pretty close to being those conditions. The greens weren't quite as fast then as they were at the US Open, but the rough was all still pretty thick. And I think they had said they hadn't cut the rough all year yet. So I did take a lot of pictures. You can see a couple here. The one on the left is hole 12, the par 3, where Nelly had her 10, and that caused a ton of havoc for everybody during the tournament. There's a little bit of the prep and the stands and the infrastructure going up on the left. All the members were hitting off of mats, and I think they started that at the end of 2023. So they were carrying around little pieces of mat. Fortunately, as a player, didn't have to do that, and the members were also doing the same thing to make sure it was in pristine condition in the practice area as well. And then the picture on the right, that is hole 18. And so from the scouting trip, kind of got an idea of what to expect. I mean, I knew it was going to be long. I knew rough was going to be thick. And so finding fairways was going to be essential. And then short game was also going to be, critical, which you kind of expected, but that just kind of confirmed everything about that. And then what surprised me probably the most was the course is very hilly and it's a lot of downhill tee shots to uphill approaches. So it makes controlling distances even more challenging.
Notice that you're lefty, right? With that shot there. Does the course play differently for righty versus lefty? Does that come into your mind when you're scouting the course at all?
I don't think so. I think there's always going to be on every course shots that you as a player may not be as comfortable with depending on your shot shape. So I typically play a draw. So, for me, a dogleg right is certainly more comfortable, but there's a lot of dogleg lefts on all courses. Okay. So you get used to that and you just have to take appropriate lines. So I think there's really only one hole that was a dogleg left, and that one I missed a drive, it would be okay. I drew it too much, but I did block myself out a couple times, so that made it a little more challenging. But there wasn't anything particular, I think, that stood out that favored one shot shape or another at this course.
Okay. All right. So let's fast forward to the week of the tournament. When did you get there? What kind of prep were you doing prior to your Thursday tee time? So walk us through who were you with, the whole prep during the week of.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got out there the Saturday before the US Open. Some players had already arrived. A lot would arrive on Sunday. And you pretty much were able to play the course starting at about noon on Sunday leading up to the tournament. And so let me go to the next slide. Ton of pictures from the practice rounds. My fiance came out with me at the time. And then as a caddy, I had one of my really good friends from Texas come. And so she caddied for me. So you'll see her in the picture in that top right. Really nice perk of being a player is you do get courtesy cars and they're waiting for you at baggage claim when you arrive. So that's really nice. So had a Lexus for the week. And so didn't have to worry about a rental car for the tournament as well. But everything is roped off for you. You get player dining, hospitality, get to take tons of pictures, play the course however many holes you want. And so I ended up playing 18 holes on Sunday, 9 holes Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So as much as there's a lot going on, and so it was definitely was cognizant of having to manage your energy and not trying to do too much and being just totally gassed by the time Thursday came. So you can see some of the things that they'll do a lot of these things at other USGA events, but you have nameplates when you're warming up, a lot more infrastructure and decor with the logo at the US Open, which is always fun to see. So took lots of pictures. There were no fans on Sunday and Monday. And so we kind of got free reign and got to see the course without a whole lot of people being around. Monday, didn't play a practice round with anybody. Was signed up to play with a couple, but it rained. So a lot of people bailed on practice rounds and practiced instead. On Tuesday, got to play a practice round actually with Nelly Corda and Megan King, which was a lot of fun. Really awesome. Super nervous on that first tee shot with her. But that went well. So got to play 9 holes with her. And there's a picture of that in the middle, various different outfits. You start seeing fans show up, so that's cool. Signed lots of flags. There's a tee shot picture hitting way downhill over a river in the top right, hitting some bunker shots in the bottom right on a practice green. And you can see my caddy, we're figuring out lines and where we want to hit it. And then a nice thing, since a lot of these LPGA players, and I mean, even those who play a lot of golf, aches and pains will show up. So they had all the recovery services available. And typically at a lot of tournaments, amateur tournaments will be just like a PT or one athletic trainer. And so they had all of that. They had massage therapists, and they had a lot of things to help with recovery. So they'd help you with ice baths, or they had the Normatex available, which are compression. I think these ones are air-driven compression sleeves for your legs to help with recovery there. They had compression hyperbaric chambers as well. And then, yeah, so there's one picture of me signing flags for a few kids. Probably the closest thing I got to on TV was when Nelly was signing flags there. So that's a snapshot from one of my friends on Golf Channel. Didn't hit anything noteworthy to make the actual highlights. So found that one going through my photos. And then, yeah, a photo with Nelly after hole 9 in the bottom right, and Megan King, and then one other am I played with. Couple friends, so my caddy, Chaitra, and then another friend was Mary. She's the equipment rep for Callaway. And so the equipment companies are there Monday through Wednesday, and they'll help you fine tune anything. So I dialed in a driver, changed out a driver head at the tournament as well, got my clubs regripped, that sort of thing. Generally at the majors, players aren't going to be changing a whole lot of equipment, but they will dial in stuff and make sure everything is where they need it to be. Yeah, so that's what we have.
You said you were nervous just teeing off in front of Nelly, like even on a practice round. What does nerve mean for you? What does that mean?
Still, definitely was shaking a little. If I had looked down at my hands and tried to hold it steady,
really?
And so, the stomach wasn't super settled either. And so, yeah, she had a ton of fans. Her and Megan had a ton of fans already for the practice rounds on Tuesday. And so, played that first tee shot pretty well. And that actually helped when Thursday came around for sure, because as exciting as for us, had a ton of family there, wasn't going to have the crowds of Nelly. And it's still the first tee shot at the U.S. Open, so had some nerves, but having that experience on Tuesday helped take the edge off on Thursday.
Because I mean, you played a couple of LPGA tournaments. You play with other professionals, right? But just having her on a foursome was nerve-wracking. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Since that the same thought still cross your mind of like, don't lay the sod over it. Don't just completely miss the golf ball sort of thing, right? And so, I played with some pretty accomplished players in those LPGA events, but it's the same sort of thing. It's like, they're solid players, but now you're talking about, one of the stars of the LPGA as well. So.
Okay. So after, a couple of practice rounds and Thursday comes in, did you reset any goals or expectation at that point? I know you said earlier you didn't really have any expectation, but at that point before the first tee shot, any thoughts went through your mind that week going in to the actual?
No, I wanted to play well, but it's probably the biggest thing I wanted out of that. Enjoy the experience. If I made the cut, that would have probably been like, we're great for the season. I don't really care what else would have happened. So, just to go out and play well, really, and enjoy the experience as much as possible, since it was going to take good golf to make the cut. The course was hard, and I mean, we saw it in the scores. Compared to other U.S. Opens, it was one of the higher cut lines for sure. I think they said, and so there were lots of big numbers out there. So it was tough for the pros as well.
Right. I think there was only one at the end, one player with under par, I think, right? That the winner.
I think it might have been just you guys. There, a lot of people fell back, so just even finishing under par was impressive.
Okay. All right. So let's go to day one, Thursday. You were, I think, grouped with Alexa Melton and Cynthia Liu at 12:30 tee off on Thursday. So walk us through day one. So what that felt like Thursday.
Yeah. I don't know if it helped or hurt, but it was a 12:30 tee time, so I had a lot of time in the morning to kill. But hung out with my family. We rented a house for the week about 20 minutes from the course, and so took it easy, chilled out, and then got to the course, had lunch, and went through my typical warm up, which I typically start out with a little stretching and then work my way through the bag from wedges up to driver. And then I'll hit the short game area, as you can see. So there's a picture with my caddy. We have to wear the bibs now with the name by the time the first round comes. And then warmed up in the short game area and then hit some putting as well, both short putts, feeling good about technique, and then hitting lag putts to get really good feel for speed. And then don't know exactly what hole that was on where the driver tee shot, but that was one of them. And then, made a really good 4 on the first hole, pretty easy. Hit a good approach shot to pin high and lagged it pretty easy. So that was nice to get that out of the way. Had a good look at birdie on hole 2 that I left just short. And so, got off to a pretty strong start. And then, you miss a couple shots here and there, made a couple bogeys along the way. So things can get away from you pretty quick. So was certainly frustrated a little bit, but I was trying to keep a positive attitude about it because it's going to be hard. We knew that. Fought the driver a little bit on the back nine. Couldn't find the fairway as reliably as I needed to. So that made things extra challenging because of the amount of rough. It's hard to advance it. Hole 12 was playing super hard, so there was a long back up on that hole. So before hitting that tee shot to that green, probably had a 45 minute wait with the number of groups on
Wow. That's a long time. Wow.
Yeah. No, that hole played hard, given it was already hard without any wind, and then the wind was blowing too, which made it more challenging. Then definitely in the afternoon, the wind picked up more, so conditions got tougher. And then made a few good up and downs coming in and made a few good pars coming in as well.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see a lot of that on TV, right? The weight, that's a lot of waiting on that hole too. So, yeah.
Yeah, you don't unless you're playing. I think the closest thing you would notice if you're tracking a player and you're like, it's taking a long time for them to post the next score, right? Whatever it
Right.
is. And that gives you an idea of when people
Mhm.
finish, sort of thing. But yeah, I think we probably didn't finish until close to 6, maybe
Wow.
6:15. So I think it was definitely at least a 5.5 hour round.
Mhm.
It was probably close to 6.
Gotcha. How was the interaction with your caddy? I know it's your good friend. Did you guys, help each other or help you with the putt, lines? What was that like working with her?
Yeah, so we would typically talk through yardages and reading greens and helping doing all of that over the shot, and then we talk and just about other things in between shots. And so, pass the time and just give you a little extra boost of confidence. So typically between her and I, we'd figure out yardages based on the yardage book. So I have an example of here what we typically look at. The picture shows, pin positions for the day. This isn't from the U.S. Open. I didn't have one. I appear to have misplaced my yardage book from Lancaster when I went looking for it. But this would be an example between the yardages given, which has like carry yardages to different bunkers or how far it is to the front edge of a fairway bunker or greenside bunker and where the slopes are. Can kind of figure out where you want to land it and what you want to avoid. At the US Open, you can't use a rangefinder during competition. So you're going to do a lot of pacing off of things and figuring out yardages, and everything's given to the front of the green. So you take everything into account to figure out yardages to pins. But typically, you're never playing the number to the flag. Typically trying to play with how firm the greens are, you're going to often land things short and let things expect it to roll out or run up, sort of thing.
Gotcha. So I understand that you get yardage book every single day because it's different pin placements, right? So
yeah, so the yardage book won't change, but the pins will change. But each course will have a yardage book, and from year to year, they're generally consistent, but they'll typically be small updates if you're coming back to the same course over the years. So I think if you check with like an LPGA player or any pro player, they'll have a ton of these books, and I have a ton from college still that are in a bin.
Okay. Right. So day one, at the end of day one, how were you feeling after that? Were you
After
happy?
the end of day one, tired.
Okay.
Course is super hilly, and so my feet were hurting. But went to the range afterwards because, like I mentioned, didn't hit my driver grade, so tried to find a good feeling for that. It was a little bit of setup, I think. And then, didn't spend too long there. Went home and got dinner because I was the first off in the afternoon wave, which meant I was going to be the first off in the morning wave the next day. So it's a quick turnaround. And I think my tee time was at 6:45 the next day. So it was going to be a good wake up call. And I think actually gates opened at 7 for the fans. So we were teeing off before anyone was showing up except for the volunteers. So, was probably disappointed, and the US Open exposes shots, made a few mistakes that were definitely avoidable, but thought I could play it, would have to put a good round and hit it well the next day to get close to the cut line. But really, again, expectations were, at the end of the night, with given the tee time, it was mostly get home, eat some dinner, roll out a little bit, and get to bed because it's an early morning the next day.
So 6:45 minutes. What's your routine? Like, how early do you get there to practice and get warm up? Like, what's your typical?
So it's a little hard in the morning because things sometimes don't open up early enough.
I see. Yeah.
Typically, my preference is about an hour and 15 for my whole warm up routine, and then since there's a gym on site, would like to stretch and get moving for 10 to 15 minutes beforehand. And then you got to fit in breakfast in there too, right? So it can take a while with everything. So that morning, I think I got there like 4:45 or 5. So it gives you time to eat without being rushed, and not really feel like you have to rush through everything. So yeah, early morning, and then try to take off, do a little bit less of maybe some of the warm up of what can I cut a little bit shorter, because again, you don't want to tax yourself, and I'm just trying to maximize rest as well.
Yeah, gotcha. So tell us about day two. I know you started off with a birdie on number 10, so that was a good feeling, right?
Yeah.
First birdie.
Yeah, that was a nice start. So, didn't make a single birdie on the first day. Had a couple looks on the first day, but didn't get anything in a drop. So that was on hole 10. Hit a good drive. And then I think I had a 5-wood in, so like 180, a 180 shot. And that finished pretty perfect. It was hard to see because it was still, sun had just come up, so you really couldn't see anything where it showed up. And I was expecting, there were a couple of volunteers behind the green and there was no reaction. So I didn't think it was that as good as it turned out when I got up there. Had hit it probably to like 8 to 10 feet and made the putt. So that was a nice start, good start to the day. And then hit it tight on 11 again as well. These greens have a ton of slope, so missed that one, but easy 4. And then hole 12 was not kind to me either day, so put it in the water there. It felt like little wind out of the sails, but tried to keep grinding from there. Had a stretch of a bunch of bogeys in the middle of the round, and then the last 6-ish holes, I think, played really strong, made a lot of really solid pars, which was nice. So, course can be played. It demands you hit good shots. And when you miss, the misses could be punishing, which was the biggest thing.
Gotcha. I know you said the greens had a lot of undulations, but was it one of the fastest greens you ever played at in your career?
I think green speed wise, I've seen faster. The US Mid-Am this past year was actually pretty dang fast. But the combination of how much slope they have and the green speeds made them extremely fast, extremely difficult. You were above the hole, you were pretty toast, and they were going. So definitely had a number of 3 putts that week. And it baffled me. There were a couple times, well, I ended up making the second putt, but somehow left a downhill putt short, which I didn't think was possible. Super challenging. The greens had a ton of slope and undulations because they're set in, a lot of them are set into hillsides, so they have the slope of the hillside, but then they have a bunch of undulations crisscrossing it as well, too.
Were the pin placements a little more difficult in day 2 versus day 1, or
No, they're pretty similar, and not unexpected. No, given the size of the field, which is 156 players, they can't make them extremely difficult. Otherwise, they wouldn't get everybody through. So there's a little bit balance of that, but they weren't easy either, for sure. Typically, you'll see it a little bit. I think they'll ramp it up in difficulty a lot on like the 3rd round.
Gotcha.
So you can really separate yourself if you play well that day.
Okay. I think before I've got a few more questions too, but I would like to open up for folks on the phone. Any other questions for Kim, and we can go on, but I'd like to open up for a little bit. Anyone from the audience? I see one from Frank. Kim, what do you see as the most common injuries among competitive golfers? Have you had any? What training, stretching do you do to help prevent them?
I think wrist and back injuries are pretty common. There's always something, and it kind of depends on the player. I've been fortunate to be pretty injury free outside of, it was not golf induced injuries sort of thing. But post college and definitely during the Mid-Am career have been more cognizant of my body and recovery. So have a great PT here in Midland, which a great friend who has kept me healthy and identified weaknesses that I can keep working on too. Definitely noticed it at the end of the US Mid-Am after playing 2 practice rounds. It was something like 10 rounds of golf in 8 days. It's a lot of golf. So the body was feeling it by the end of that week.
Nice. Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Injuries definitely can derail you there. Another question from Ida. I know we talked a little bit about your mental game, but what do you do to stay mentally strong? Like through the week before, the day of the tournament, throughout the round, like how are you mentally keeping yourself strong?
It's not easy. A lot of it is coming back to the fact that what you've done is already in the past. You can't change it. And so the next best thing that you can do is just to focus on the next shot and give it your best effort and try and keep doing that over and over. Not to say that's easy, but one thing I try and always tell myself, this is something we got from my coach in college, is like dump the baggage, just positive attitude. So that's why it's nice having a caddy, especially a friend, so you can just talk to someone, not think about golf, or talk to your fellow competitors as well.
Do you know the goldfish analogy from Ted Lasso? You watch Ted Lasso?
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay, well, he's got a goldfish analogy. Goldfish basically doesn't remember anything from the past, so you forget about it immediately. So hopefully, if you can do that in golf, yeah. So
it's the same sort of thing. So as much as you can kind of keep trying to fight and do the same thing.
Gotcha. All right, another question from Kelly. You know, what kept you from pursuing like professional golf? I guess was another question. So
right, I was good at the end of my college career. I wasn't great. So I mean, I didn't get any of. I wasn't good enough to play. To be selected to like an all-conference team or an all-American team like that. So I knew it would be a tall task, one, to pursue the professional career. And unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot of wealth in the LPGA or women's professional golf. It's gotten a lot better in the last 4 or 5 years, but at the time, you still you make zero money on the mini tours. You're just trying to not lose money, which is a tall task. And then that last semester of college, I was between visiting grad schools and golf tournaments. I think I was gone almost every weekend leading up to spring break. And so that's kind of what tour life is. And that was not what I wanted to be doing. And, wanted to explore other passions as well. So a combination of, I love golf, but wanted to do something else. And just, it's a hard career. So you got to really love it and be all in on it to work at it and get better. And especially in those first few years, you're probably going to take some punches and lose a lot of money at the same time.
Yeah. Another question. I know you talked about playing with Nelly Korda and Megan Kang at a practice round. Question was about, did you interact with any other players, during the tournament, before, after, locker room, should say for the weekend, any other encounters, or they were all more on their own kind of?
Yeah, so I got to play with Shia Knight and Nasa Hataoka on Wednesday during the practice round, so that was fun. My caddy grew up playing golf with Cheyenne, so that was nice. Just it broke the ice a lot faster than with other. Sometimes it can be with other players, so that was nice to have interacted with her a little bit. With Cynthia and Alexa, didn't spend a whole lot of time in the locker room. The locker room wasn't the most inviting place to stay. The facilities are nice, but the locker room could have used an update. It felt a little bit kind of like a swimming pool locker room. So not the most inviting place to stay for that. And then, stayed for the weekend, watched a little bit of golf, and then practiced a little bit too, since once everybody tees off, those who miss the cut and are around for the weekend are welcome to actually practice if they wanted to.
Okay, gotcha. Another question was around, who is in your dream foursome?
Probably my family. So we've got my dad, my younger brother, and one of my aunts probably plays pretty regularly. So that'd probably be the dream foursome.
Any other famous players you want to play with? No?
I love Lydia's game. So I mean, I would love to play around with her or 9 holes. She's probably, I love her short game. Would be the one.
Yeah, she had an amazing year this year, obviously, with the Olympics and everything. So, let's see. If you were to sum up this U.S. Open experience, Kim, in 3 adjectives, 3 words, what would you use, do you think?
Awesome, hard. It's the last word. I have phrases. I had to figure out the last word.
Did you have fun though? I mean, looking back.
Yeah, and fun. Yeah. So would absolutely do it again. It's a test that I think the LPGA players would agree to. You can embrace it, have a lot of fun, but you don't want a steady dose of it. So like a once a year thing is plenty.
I guess the logical follow-up question is, I know, professional career is not in your wheelhouse now, but like, what's next for you in terms of competing, golf? Like, have you hit the apex now, or what any other goals you're setting for yourself in the coming years?
Yeah, I've got a few. Would like to win another US Mid-Am. Where I'm into the USAM next year as well from last year's win, so I'd like to make the cut there and really test myself against the top amateurs. So that includes college players, high school players too. So that would be a nice goal. Make the U.S. Open again. Into the U.S. 4-ball with my partner. And I haven't made the cut there, so making the cut there would be awesome. And then there's now the Concession Cup, which is Ryder Cup style for mid-ams and senior ams. Europe versus the U.S. Was fortunate enough to be selected for Team USA this past year, and so in 2 years that's going to be in Europe. So would be nice to get a selection for that again. So that's going to require some good golf over the next couple of years.
Is that more ranking based, or is that captain's pick? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a little bit of rankings based and how you play. You can collect points in certain tournaments. So a combination of that, but they also recognize not all of the tournaments will get points, so they'll consider your other playing resume as well.
Gotcha. Another question came in from the audience. What sort of stretching do you do before warming up at the range? Do you have a stretching routine as well, aside from hitting the ball?
Yeah, so I hit my hips a lot. I do a ton of leg swings, a lot of rotation, shoulders, arms, back. Definitely my back. I feel like my back gets the stiffest of everything for me. So that's rolling out, and then just, cat-cow or doing upper thoracic spine mobility things. So really whatever gets you feeling good, and you kind of want to have a little bit of intensity to it so you'll get your body warm. And then I'm still dealing with a really tight ankle from the skiing accident, so I stretch that a lot.
Right. I know you also have a full-time job, so how do you juggle work, playing? These tournaments happen on weekdays too, right? Not all weekends. So how do you juggle that with being competitive? Yeah.
So can't play in everything, and so I have to pick and choose tournaments. So this past year's schedule definitely looked a little bit different, more of a national tournament schedule than I typically otherwise would play. And fortunately in Michigan, during the summer, the days are long. At the peak of summer, it doesn't get dark in Michigan until 9:30. So I'm wrapping up work by 5 usually, and so there's plenty of time to get out and play. But I play in a league with friends on Thursdays. I'll play on the weekends, but I won't necessarily play a whole lot else during the week. I'll practice a lot of time on short game and putting, and then maybe hit the range once, maybe twice a week. So yeah, fortunately in the practice we have long days, that helps. And then we have some flexibility at Dow, and they're supportive of it. And so as long as I'm staying on top of my work, have some flexibility to go play in some of these tournaments.
So you've got your all 2025 dates all scheduled out?
I've got a few. There's a couple of state level tournaments that I hope I can play in, but it'll be hard. So yeah, I've got 3 USGA events already on the calendar. So the US four ball in May, the US AM in August, and then the US Mid Am in October. So that's probably about 3 weeks already there, depending on how far I go.
Just curious, what's the difference in US AM versus Mid Am? Is there a difference? Yeah.
So the US Mid Am, same structure, but the US Mid Am is limited to those for still amateurs, but you have to be 25 or over. The US Am is no age restriction as long as you meet the handicap restriction. And so it was originally started in the late 80s, both the men and the women, as a way to give amateurs post-college a competitive tournament to play. They weren't turning pro, and the age I think was originally set at 25 because like most people, if they're going to turn pro, would have turned pro by then, and so wouldn't be playing in this.
Gotcha. That's helpful. Any other questions from the audience? I know we got a few minutes left today.
Actually, I had one, Ken.
Sure.
Do you think your PhD, probably not too many people have an MIT PhD or a PhD out on the LPGA, et cetera. Does that change how you might affect how you sort of approach a competition or just a big event in general? Is that some sort of mental training that's you find maybe advantageous or maybe disadvantageous? Maybe you overthink it.
No, I don't think going through the PhD necessarily helped with the golf. I think honestly, a lot of the golf and the competitive golf I had through college helped with the PhD, in that it taught me a lot of patience, a lot of persistence, because I wasn't a world beater coming into college. I redshirted my freshman year, and it was a fight to get into the lineup, even my redshirt freshman year. So, a lot of failure along the way in golf. So you learn a lot of patience and persistence and grit through that, which helps with the PhD, because a PhD is hard and you're going to fail a lot, and things don't really work until something kind of starts working, typically for most people in your third, fourth year. Also, when you're wondering if you're going to ever finish this PhD as well. So, helped with that. And so those are probably some traits that, I've still persisted. I still have. So, yeah.
Gotcha. There will be one final question, and I'll turn it over to Tony from the audience. I know you said another goal would be to get back to the Open again by qualifying one of those amateur tournaments. What would you do differently if you were to play the US Open again in the future? Anything differently? Learning experience from this? Takeaways?
I spent a lot of time on short game. I needed to spend more time on the short game. And I didn't think it was possible. That and a little bit more putting, and you have to be a little bit more precise and really dialed in with your speed control. So that's probably things leading up to it I would have spent more time on. I didn't hit it. I don't hit it very far. And so this is like overall goal. I've always wanted to get longer. And that would have made playing at the US Open, a little bit more easier as well.
So it is true that the short game really matters, not the long game.
Yeah. The US Open will test everything, so you have to have everything firing ideally.
Gotcha. Of course. So Kim, thank you for the chat. Really a pleasure talking to you. Only some of us can emulate what you can do on a golf course, so really appreciate it. And I'll turn it over to Tony to say closing remarks. Thank you today.
Great. Well, thank you both, Kim and Ken. That was great and very interesting and informative. Always feel very privileged to get the inside story. There's not a lot of places I feel I could go and access this sort of insight and information. So it's always I feel privileged that we have a chance to do those sorts of things. So thank you very much. And obviously it's personal as well. So thank you for sharing your insight and your experience, Kim. Much appreciated. Part of our family and community at MIT. So within that spirit, so that's great. And just a quick little plug from MITAGA. So in the chat box, there's a link if people aren't members of MITAGA yet and would like to explore that. So for those of you still on the call, that's there. And just thank you everybody who's attended today, and look forward to seeing you at future events. Mark Brody was one, and another was the RNA World Museum, Golf Museum for St. Andrews. So hopefully we'll see some of you all again then. So thanks very much and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.